Hi, I'm Adam,
I'm Ryan.
and we are the Gamesmiths, and we just finished 4 rounds of Mazers. Ryan did shut me out 4-0, and so I am going to kick it to Ryan. He's obviously the superior Mazers player, so I'm
Right.
going to kick it to Ryan for some thoughts on strategy and the overall game.
Sure. So enjoyed the second, or whatever, the second round of playthroughs. We did play it once before. Enjoyed this set of games. Definitely saw more strategy to it. Our last game was a lot like our first game. I think our first game was kind of quick. We didn't really get a chance to block each other, except Adam's rolls. I believe the first time we played were a little bit more competitive, so it was really, really close the first time we played, and we felt like, oh, it just seems kind of like a race. But that's because we both got some like big numbers, enough to move our offense forward, but neither of us really knew so much what we were doing with our blockers, and so our blockers, while we had plenty of space to move them, were out of position, and we just kind of ended it. And so playing more and learning more about the game and considering more and figuring out moves like, oh, if I put this here, it's going to be hard for him, and figuring all that out definitely was satisfying, and saw a lot more, definitely saw some more like strategic depth to the game. I know our previous feedback was due to like a lack of choices in the game. And while something like tokens, like we suggested before for power-ups or something, might do something to spice up the game, I definitely saw like a good amount of strategic depth here, though.
Yeah, out of 4 games, only one of our games turned out where the dice just dominated the game, like our first game did, the previous time we played this. And so in 4 games, it still happened once, but it wasn't as bad. Last time it was 100% of the time the dice just determined the winner,
Right.
which didn't feel strategy at all. But I agree with Ryan. This time around, 3 out of the 4 games felt strategic, and I even had him pinned down pretty well in that second game. And I really do think the mix of strategy and a big roll to get him, one big roll gets you just way past their blockers.
Right.
And then because you're using 2 dice to advance, it's hard to catch up with a blocker because 2 dice are advancing your opponent, and you're trying to catch up with 1 dice and hoping that color rolls the right, high number to keep up with their 2 numbers if they're rolling decent to large numbers. And so often a big roll really does just break
Kind
up
of
in
bust
the game.
you out. Yeah, you can definitely like sit back and wait until you get that big roll and then
Right.
take advantage of it and try and go, all right, this is my move, or I'm going for it here. So there's definitely a lot more strategy, and I did find more enjoyment in that aspect, and found myself really like in the tank from times, just really like thinking about stuff like that.
Right.
One thing I would say though that I didn't really like as much in the strategy game was the rolls and how much they could take over the game. You even had in the tips section of one of the versions of the rule books, I've seen a couple different ones, that said that rolling, the dice rolls matter. If you roll a bunch of low numbers, anybody can beat you, kind of thing like that.
So the tip is to win more games.
Right, roll higher numbers, and that kind of feels bad.
Yeah.
And there's the issue of the compounding. Since you use every dice roll twice, we were talking about it in that 4th game. I was easy to just get out there and win so fast because on my first roll I got a 12 or an 11, and I think I got a 12 on my first roll, and then Adam got a 4, and Adam got a 4. And so, but then we use each of those dice rolls twice.
Yeah.
So basically, Adam got an 8, and I got a 24.
Yeah.
And that, gave me 16 pips, 16 whatever's worth of advantage, 16 moves over Adam. I got to make 16 more moves than he did. And then a second roll like that where he
Right.
got like, I think 7 or 6, and then I got 11. Well, now it's 12 to 22. When you do that math, that's another 10.
Yeah.
So now at this point, after only 2 rolls, I've gotten to make 26 more moves than Adam has, because every roll is compounded.
Between walls and blockers.
Right, between walls and walls.
Because it affects both your walls and your blockers.
Right.
So bad rolls bad on both levels. It hurts you twice. A good roll is good on both levels. It helps you twice.
Right. And so everything just gets compounded, and what you don't generally want in strategy games, for like the pure strategy games, are these big swingy things where random chance causes like big amounts of change, and someone just does one thing that just totally, randomly blows open the game that not everybody could account for. You're going from, okay, well, if he rolls snake eyes, he gets to move each of his blockers one space, and his maze barely advances.
Yeah.
And if he rolls 12, everything's on the other side of the board.
Right.
And you're just like, I don't know how to plan around that. I don't know how to strategize. You can do what you can do to mitigate it, but
Yeah.
you're always just, he gets a good roll, I get a bad roll, away from the game just being blown open.
Right.
And that can be, you can't really strategize for that. Like if I got that one big roll and I started game 4 with, I'm just going for it. But if I had gotten nothing but snake eyes from there on out, I would have been in a lot of trouble. Like I couldn't even have really committed to an aggressive strategy. All that to say that I think a lot of the issues could be mitigated by just having them roll twice. You roll once and do the black and white for your blockers and move your blockers, and then roll again and add them up and use that number for your path.
Yeah.
Because that way you're not getting, and you get it helps to enforce kind of the order of play, because you're supposed to move your blockers first and then your line. And sometimes we would get confused on that. We would be just like, oh, I want to move this first, and so no, that's not your roll for your maze. You don't get to use that. Use that roll to move your die or to move your blockers, and then the next rolls for your maze.
And we both really appreciate the cleverness of
And the
two-colored
simplicity,
dice. You
yeah.
roll at the same time. You're in game design. It's really awesome to find those moments when you can be efficient and interesting. And I don't know that I've played a game that quite does that.
No,
But
I
when
think
you
it's pretty
do, when
unique.
you're a real gamer and you play a tremendous amount of games, we play more than normal, but. Even most gamers, whenever they get to a new game, they're going to be like, oh, okay, I know all these elements. I've seen them somewhere else before. And when you have that little surprising, even if it's as simple as a supporting mechanic around the dice roll, it's always fun as a gamer to go, oh, wow, something I haven't seen before.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
really fun. So we both did appreciate the value in you using the dice rolls that way. Great design job, but I don't think mechanically it's a great design, like a fun design move, but I think mechanically it doesn't help the game as
It
much.
compounds
as
some problems. It just
splitting
makes
them up.
it makes those feel bads a little worse and a little
Right.
swingier. So maybe play around with that, because that would be a simple rule tweak. But then we were also having some thoughts on, I think if that's the way you want to go, and I think there's definitely some opportunities for depth of strategy here, and that's the way you want to go, is kind of deeper strategy and encourage that. You might look at kind of rebranding it a little
Yeah.
bit. That's something that would be geared toward an older audience.
Right.
It might need a more just a different aesthetic or a different theme.
Right. And as we were talking about it, we were having a hard time understanding who you wanted your target audience to be. I think at very first glance, just being honest, when I look at the game, I think late 80s, early 90s, Milton Bradley type game. And this is the type of game that, I could see in a big box store back at that time, even all throughout the 90s. And it has that retro art. It has, which I appreciate. It's very nostalgic for me. It looks like a game I would have grown up playing, and would want to play with my kids now. And so if that's the target, I think it is fun. I think the art's fun. I think the retro style game is great. Feels like a throwback to us adults now who have children and who are buying these types of games for kids. But at that point, the strategy doesn't matter. The kid just wants to, it's a mouse, he wants to move it through the maze, and that's
Right.
just fun at face value. And so trying to make the game strategic, or trying to emphasize a strategic value in the game, I don't think benefits you as much. If you are going for an older crowd, and you want them to really engage this game, I think there are some interesting strategies already built into the game, and I think you could go that path too. But as an adult, without kids around me, I struggle to fall into the theme of this game fall in a good way, where it's like a story or a book. And I think the way games are going today, they're becoming more thematic, they're becoming more story driven, even video games becoming very much more story driven, and people love to just fall into these worlds and kind of fantasize about what the game's allowing them to be for the hour or two that they're playing it. And so this one, I just have a hard time falling into the theme or the story of you're a mouse trying to get through a maze and into the other.
Just kind of a mouse trying to. Yeah, I think it just says from one safe zone to the other. It's just mouse going through a maze.
So I even when I imagine what that's meaning, I'm just thinking I'm in a mouse race.
And can I actually interject there real quick? Because there actually isn't any of that. A lot of the games that we play, or a lot of games that you'll see, will have some just at least paragraph of like flavor text or story at the front. And like there wasn't any of that in Mazers. You just go straight into the objective is to move your mouse from one end to the other. You didn't say like you didn't say like you are competing scientists who are trying to train the smartest mouse to go through the maze, and you have to, your big presentations on Sunday, and you and your rival colleague both have mouses to present. Get your mouse through the maze the fastest while trying to block your opponent's mouse. Like, because if you ask like, how does this game play? I can explain that, but like, what is this game? What are we doing? I can't explain that. I'm like, the mouse is trying to get there.
Yeah.
I don't know what I am. Am I the mouse? Am I someone who's trying to guide the mouse? Because I'm putting up these walls, so it seems like I'm more someone trying to guide the mouse.
Yeah.
But who am I, and why am I trying to guide this mouse somewhere? And even just a paragraph like that would go a long way, even with what you have here. But then it could be.
That's a good point.
It could be anything too. Like you were talking about. I don't know.
Well,
if
you
said,
can
but
keep it. Yeah, I guess I didn't. You're very clear about the objective, which some people aren't. So good job on that. But Ryan's right. You didn't start the story for us, because I think that good intro paragraph needs to jumpstart the story in someone's head, get their imagination going, make them want to enter that world. And then the game itself tells the story as you're playing it. But you need to start the story in someone's head. And that wasn't there. And even just as you were saying that, still in nostalgic brain, but I'm thinking Pinky and the Brain.
Right, something like that.
I'm like controlling these goofy lab rats. And even that, I'm starting to think, I can get more into this game now. And I didn't realize until Ryan said it that thematic opening statement wasn't there.
Yeah.
So I definitely think that should be there. And you could even keep the mouse theme if you make it goofy and fun enough, and we're crazy scientists, and because I could have fun being a crazy scientist.
Sure.
But if I'm just a mouse racing another mouse, that doesn't engage my adult brain as much.
Right.
And so if this is an adult game, I think a retheme or a rebrand could help you. I think you could take that same maze-like structure, and maybe your spies, maybe your different armies, and you have a spy behind enemy lines, and you're trying to sneak that spy around behind enemy lines. So you're starting on the opponent's side instead of starting on your side and trying to invade the opponent's side as a mouse. You're now you begin your journey behind enemy lines, and you're a spy trying to escape and come back into your own territory, and the blockers are patrolmen who are trying to find you, and if they block you in, game's over. Or if whatever, you can use that same play surface, the same structure, all the pieces you have, and just give it a new theme that engages an adult brain better, that makes me want to sit there and feel like for hours I'm a spy trying to escape an enemy threat or gather intel or whatever I'm trying to do.
Yeah. And I would.
That's all just based on who your target audience is, which we don't really know. So we're not trying to push you one way or the other, but we think making that clearer and trying to create a strength in that for your game, and then play to that strength.
And no matter who they are, no matter who your target audience is, that story will go a long way.
Yes.
So if you want to keep it with mice, you want to keep it with this, you want to keep it with kids, come up with a story about the mice. Just come up with a story about the mice. And it has to be a paragraph long, and that's it. Why are the mice in the maze getting to one end to the other? Even that will go a to get people in the right mindset of what they're doing and why they're doing it. No, this makes sense. And then the other thing that I was thinking as well was if you do want to focus on the strategy of this and maybe towards a little more of an older audience, I trust you've played this a lot, and I'm sure you have a reason for not allowing you to block both ends of a person's path. But I'm always a fan of alternate win conditions in games, and where like, okay, 9 times out of 10, I'm going to win by getting my mouse, into the other side and putting it there. But if one out of every 10 games, I could win by blocking, like if I could in one turn do like a hard block on my opponent on both ends and have the game win there, that might be a little feel bad for kids. Like that might be kind of a bully move. Like kids might not like that. But if you're playing, if you want to go towards a more strategic audience, then that gives you another option. That even if I'm like right there, right about to get into your thing, if you could at the last minute cut off both my ends and just be boom, you're done. Like, game over. That would be a fun. I think that could be a fun way to win.
I agree.
But I don't know. I'm sure you've play tested it. I don't know if it's too easy, because I was never actively trying for it because it was illegal. So if it's too easy or whatever, and you've play tested it and it just doesn't work, fine. But I would consider allowing it too. Just another way to win the game adds another depth of strategy, because now you got to worry about, having your blockers. Because to me, it seemed more advantageous to always keep your blockers in front of your opponent and never try and end cap them like that. But then having that end cap strategy in there, now all of a sudden you got another game, or you got some other options or other avenues you can take. But either way, we had a lot of fun with it. There's definitely a lot of strategy here. Maybe a little too swinging for a pure strategy game, and it lacked a story. It lacked any kind of narrative to it. But there are a lot of solid mechanics here, a lot of fun things to do, a lot of cool choices, a lot of different ways to play it that I think we found out today. So thank you very much, and keep up the good work.